Hey there. So it's been a couple weeks since I returned from Ukraine on a trip that put me there over the Christmas holiday and sent me really way off course in my life. But it was something that I was called to do, and I don't really have too much more of an explanation that I want to get into right now beyond that. What I do want to do is I want to spend a couple of moments for all of the people who contributed to the brief fundraiser that I did beforehand to share some gratitude. And then from there, I want to share with you the first of a number of videos that I'm going to be rolling out that I took on my trip over there, and some interviews and some time with people who I think that you might find inspirational, you might find informational. Um, but but like I said, before I go anywhere, I really just want to thank everybody who in my GoFundMe fundraiser, that when I felt this sudden impulse and this call to do what I did, people contributed, and it was really amazing. I ended up raising exactly the exact amount of money that I had was needed for a flight and for the bus from Warsaw to Lviv. And when I mean exact, I mean the amount of money that I raised was about $30 under the exact cost. Now, I landed in Warsaw and I took a bus into Ukraine. It was about a 12-hour bus ride. And everybody who contributed to this got me there. So I really want to acknowledge that. I want to acknowledge each one of you, whether it was $5 or whether it was more, it doesn't make a difference. It was incredibly helpful, and it allowed me to begin a body of work that's going to be enormously helpful for a lot of people other than myself, because I will admit I was in a really challenging place when I felt this calling to do something. I don't know anything about Ukraine, or I didn't. I probably couldn't even point to Kiev on a map. I could point to Ukraine, but I don't have family. I didn't know anybody there, right? So I had no real reason of going there, other than I knew that it was center stage for war here, in the world right now in this time. It had been going on for 4 years, and it was absolutely horrible. So I just really want to take a moment and express my thanks and my very, very sincere gratitude to everybody who helped me. What came out of that is I'm going to start to reveal, and I'll begin to explain more and more as we go. But what came out of it to begin with was an experience for me that was transformative. It moved me to a whole new place in my life that I needed to be. Unfortunately, it cost a lot too, emotionally. It really disrupted some of the most important relationships in my life, because, as you can imagine, doing something stupid like getting on a plane and going to a country where you don't speak the language, you don't know anybody there, and going into a war zone is really dumb. It's reckless. It's irresponsible. And in many ways, you could even look at it as selfish. However, none of those, on the outside, that's how it seems. None of those really had anything to do with why I ended up going. I want to say that everybody who contributed not only allowed me to go through a transformative experience, not only allowed me to really be able to get the message, a little bit of the message, a very small microcosm, like a very small amount of the message of what's truly happening there on the ground in this country, with just one small eye and just one little itty bitty social media account, and getting information as it was happening to me and sharing it with people. Now, you all know, I'm a Catholic. Been a pretty devout Catholic most of my later adult life. I've always been Catholic. If you know me, you know that. However, later in my life, I really began to double down. I started to read more theology. I started to really try to understand this path. And one of the reasons why I went to Ukraine was nobody was talking about this from a sort of a theological or even maybe like a spiritual perspective. Ukraine, I know, has a history of orthodoxy, of Christian orthodoxy. When I was a young man and I was really lost, there was one book that fell in my lap called A Way of the Pilgrim. And this is a story of a Russian Orthodox pilgrim. The story was written in the 1800s. And it was about this man who really didn't have a whole lot of direction going on in his life, and he ended up discovering in this pilgrimage, he ended up meeting someone who taught him this specific prayer, the prayer of the heart, this Jesus prayer. And this book stayed in my pocket for years and years and years and years. And it allowed me to understand that inside that realm, inside the mystical tradition of Christianity, there was something more outside my Irish Catholic roots from my grandparents. There was something much greater, something much more, something different that I just didn't, I'd never learned about or hadn't heard about. I still have that exact book. It stayed with me. It's probably, aside from the Bible that I got at Portsmouth Abbey, it's the book that I've had the longest. So I knew, and it ends up, someone told me that this, the pilgrim, even though we don't know who he is, he was Ukrainian. I don't know. Anyhow, I always knew that there was something more, and I knew that Ukraine had not only this ancient culture, but also these ancient spiritual traditions within Orthodoxy and Orthodox Christianity. Not the family of Christianity that I was from. However, soon to discover that there was a Ukrainian church that was in communion with the Roman Catholic Church, of which I belonged. So I was really I began to develop this interest in, okay, what's going on there? Like, how are we making sense of this? How are we as Christians, as people of peace, how are we understanding this insanity of all-out war? I can't quite get my head around the Russian Orthodox and what's happening there, and I'm looking forward to having those conversations, but I was very much interested in the Catholic perspective, what's happening on the ground, and I wanted to go and I wanted to have Mass on the front lines. And I wanted to do that during Christmas because I really wanted to, for more theological reasons that I'll get into in a later video, I wanted to experience that. In this video that I'm going to share with you today, it was actually, it's with a chaplain. He's a military priest, and he's at the Garrison Church in Lviv, the Church of St. Peter and Paul's. This video was taken after a funeral of a fallen soldier. And what was amazing is I couldn't understand why this soldier was maybe like in his late 50s or early 60s. He wasn't an overly decorated soldier. He had a small family, and people were mourning. His fellow soldiers were there. They were mourning. But this was my first day when I first arrived in Ukraine. This is what I saw. I want to share with you an interview that I had with one of the chaplains in this video. It's a brief interview. It's only a couple minutes long, but he shares his story about working in rehabilitation with soldiers with prosthetic limbs, soldiers who need plastic surgery because of burns and wounds, as well as what was interesting about this conversation that I had with this chaplain was how he not only serves these soldiers, but also the international contingency of soldiers that are there fighting in Ukraine. And he talked about the Argentinians, the Peruvians, the people from Uruguay that go to this hospital to celebrate the liturgy. And he explains the importance of dignity, the importance of giving people back their dignity. And then he goes on to explain the gratitude that he has for the American donors that helped with this rehabilitation center for soldiers. And then he goes on to thank the journalists who are going there and telling the truth. So I want to share this quick video that I did, this quick interview with Father Andrei. Now, my friend Father Roman, and my hat's off to you, Father, if you're watching this video, he did the translation, but it was a lot of background noise. So I ended up taking what Father Roman was translating it and saying it myself to help you with better clarity in this interview. So here's Father Andrei. My name is Father Andrei. I'm 36 years old. The service that I do for the military is as a chaplain, and I work for the wounded. The chaplaincy that I serve in is at the military hospital, and this hospital specializes in working with the wounded who are amputees, men who receive prosthetics or need plastic surgery for their wounds. It's not only a hospital for the Ukrainian soldiers, but also for the international soldiers who come to join us. It provides healing for soldiers from all over the world, not only Ukrainian forces. Also, every Sunday, I offer the Divine Liturgy, or the Masses, for the people who come to the hospital, whether they're coming for personal matters, to visit family, the nurses, the doctors, also the soldiers and visiting soldiers. As well, I work with people from Paraguay and Argentina so that they can have the dignity to come and pray in their own language. And so the idea is not only to offer prosthetics or plastic surgery, but to give people the opportunity to start new, to start a new life, to start over again. It's not only about rehabilitation for the body, but also rehabilitation for your mental health and for your psychological support and for also spiritual support. And this military hospital, this humanitarian center, was built by the help of an American charity, an American business people, maybe an American businessman who gave money for this hospital. This helped rebuild this hospital, and we're very thankful for this. We're very thankful for the support from the United States. As well, we're thankful for the journalists who come here, who give the whole world the true information about what's happening here, what's happening with this war. Hey there, want to take a quick break in this conversation. I want to thank you for spending this time with me. Your time's valuable, and being part of this, learning about my trip to Ukraine and this first day, the impact that it had on me really means a lot to me. If this interests you, I'm going to be continuing on with this project called Icons of Faith, where I'm going to be traveling to remote and dark parts of the world and exploring Catholicity and exploring our brothers and sisters in Christian faith from a Catholic perspective. That doesn't necessarily mean going to the Catholic Church, going to Catholic points of interest, and basically being a tour guide. That's not what I'm about. But going to the places where there's extreme poverty, where there's suffering. Where does our church exist in that? And trying to bring that to you as raw and as real and as uncut as possible, but also being very truthful about it. I have no sponsors. I don't intend to have any sponsors. I'm just going to be myself and doing what I'm passionate about, being at the street level. And if you're interested in this, join me over on Substack at Icons of Faith. You can also go to iconsoffaith.com. That's my website. That's where I'm going to be publishing my photography, my video, and my content. And would love to hear your feedback. Love to hear where you would like to see, where parts of the world that interest you. So I'm going to get back to the episode now. If you are watching this, wherever you're watching this, wherever you're listening to this, please do subscribe. That way you can be notified next time I have a new episode, new content that comes out. But I'm a writer, and I love to write. I love to document my work, and you'll get all that over on Substack. So join me there or wherever you're hearing this. And once again, thank you for your time, and God bless. So the second part of this is I had asked him if there was a specific experience that he had, if there was something that will stay with him in his time working in rehabilitation for the soldiers. And he shares a story about a whole family, and I want you to listen to that.
Військовий, який отримав поранення на фронті, проходив реабілітацію в тій клініці.
Military who was wounded at the front line, and he goes through the rehabilitation process, healing process in this clinic.
Родом він був зі Сходу.
He was born at the
Зокрема,
east of
з
Ukraine,
міста Константинівки.
from Donbas region, city Kostantinivka. He was born there.
Коли він був на фронті,
When he was
від
at the
російських
front line,
ракет постраждала його сім'я.
when he was at front line, during this time, from the Russian missile attack, was wounded his family.
Двоє синів, 16 років і 9.
He had two sons,
І також
16
дружина,
years
також
and
дружина.
9 years, and also his wife was wounded by Russian missiles attack.
Так вийшло, що один хлопчина втратив також ногу, як батько.
One,
Тільки не на полі бою, а від російських ракет.
one of his son lost leg at this missile attack,
А друга дитина також мала поранення.
And other boy also was wounded by Messiah's attack.
І вони всі
і
були разом,
батько втратив
так,
ногу.
і вони всі проходили реабілітацію в цій
And
клініці.
they have together, all family have this process of healing in this hospital. Father from wounded that he got from frontline, and his family from wounded that he got after a Russian rocket missile attack here in safety places.
І той тато сказав таку фразу, що попри те, що я не маю ноги, але мені тут добре, бо тут немає москаля.
And this military saying me these phrases that even I don't have leg, I'm feeling very good because here we don't have Moscow here because we are free against Moscow. Even I have rehabilitation, but we are still free. It's very good.
Тобто ця історія показує про те, що від Росії страждають абсолютно всі, від малого до великого.
So this story tells us that from Russians, not only give us wounded to the military. It's about wounded for all nations, for children, for families, for military, for old people, young people, everybody. Here in Ukraine, everybody have wounded from Russians' aggressions, Russian war.
So what Father Andre was sharing there, and I'm sorry I didn't do the voiceover on that one. I let Father Roman. I wanted you to hear his voice because Father Roman was so important to my trip, and he was just wonderful. But what Father Andre is sharing here is a story about a father who was out on the front line, and it's important to understand also that a lot of the men that are fighting on the front line right now are like 35 years old. They're in their 50s or they're in their 40s. The Ukraine wants the young people who would traditionally be conscripts, like that 18 to 22-year-old, they want them going to college because they know that when the country has to be rebuilt, they're going to need engineers, they're going to need physicians, they're going to need smart people who have been trained to rebuild the country. So it's very much like the parents and the older people that are out there fighting. That's not to say that there aren't young people, because there certainly are. However, what Father Andre was just sharing here in this video was a story about a man who was injured on the front line, but in a missile attack, his family was also all injured, and one son lost a leg, other son was severely injured, and the whole family has come to this one hospital for recovery and to heal together. And boy, I can't imagine what that was like. And then he goes on to say that even though we might not have our flag, what we don't have is we don't have Moscow, but we have each other, and we're alive. And even though we don't have a leg, we're still here, and we have our freedom. We still have our freedom. And that was the point of that story, that at least that I got from it. So this is my first day in Lviv. I had immediately been exposed to the trauma, the grief, the suffering that the people were having, that families were having. And war was immediately apparent, like immediately. So following the service, we went off to the burial, and one of the things that you see that became this sort of pattern in Ukraine more and more was something that I really wish we had here in the United States. And there was this reverence for people. There was this love for their fellow Ukrainians. When the casket of this soldier pulled over at the cemetery, cars stopped. Cars stopped on overpasses. Cars stopped on the roads. Cars stopped everywhere. Everything stopped within eyesight. And people got out of their cars on the highway. They got down on one knee until the casket had been taken up the hill. And along with the 9 o'clock moment of the moment that the Ukrainians celebrate across the country, at 9 o'clock in the morning, the whole country stops. Everybody stops. Like, kids put their cell phones away. People put their coffee down. People pull over in their cars. The entire country comes to a complete stop. And there's a moment of silence to honor the victims of this war and the families and the people who suffer through this. And then when it's done, you see a lot of people make the sign of the cross and they go about their day. But regardless, there is this solemnity and this beauty in this silence where there isn't national pride, there's no cheering, there's no anthem, there's none of that. There's just silence. And on my second day of being exposed to this, one of the things that came to my mind was there is no way that Putin can defeat this. If you have this degree of faith, and this is just me talking, and I acknowledge that I'm really kind of talking out my ass, but I can pretty safely say that as an American, looking at that depth of faith and that amount of hope, and when you talk to people, they're just like, that's all we have. Like, we have hope. Talking to the college students at the Ukrainian Catholic University and having a young lady, and we're going to release this in a later video, but having a young lady share with me that, the difference between us and the college students probably back in America is that we start our sentences with the word if, where in the rest of the world, college students, people our age, start with when. What do I mean by that? What did she mean by that? Was when I graduate college, if I graduate college, when I get a job, if I get a job, when I have kids, when I have a family, if I have a family. And these young people, this entire generation is now living on the question mark of if. They don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. Their future is really, truly unwritten. What they do have, though, what they do absolutely have is this immense hope that I really was able to just witness and savor and say, like, how do I replicate? How do I bring this into my own life? This incredible hope, no matter how bad it got. When the phones go off and everybody has on these apps that missiles are coming in or drones are coming in or whatever, they don't pay attention to that anymore. Like, everybody would be like, are you scared of the missiles? And I learned to say no pretty quickly if I wanted to be accepted, I guess. But the degree of hope for tomorrow, like, it was just, it blew me away. By day 2, I was just saying to myself, there is no way that these people will be conquered with this amount of unity and hope. And I had that experience. And I come back here, come home, come back to America, and I'm talking to my friends who get their information on TikTok or on blogs or on podcasts. And it is so far removed from everything that I witnessed over there, everything that I lived, the conversations I had. Now, the conversations I had weren't just with Catholic priests. They were with people who were, I spoke to mayors. I spoke to, like I just said, college students. I spoke to law enforcement. I spoke to military. I spoke to regular, everyday people on the street. I spoke to business owners. I spoke to the elderly. I spoke to the Orthodox Christians. I spoke to the Catholics. I spoke to artists. I spoke with a lot of artists. It was just an extraordinary mix of people. But what I can say is that there is this intense unity. They are all on this mission to survive. And what fuels that mission to survive is faith. The outcome of their faith is hope. It's hope.